For 600 years, one empire ruled 3 continents, from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia, from the Black Sea to the Red Sea. The Ottoman Empire was the most powerful Islamic civilization in history. Then, in less than a decade, it was gone. This is the story they don't teach in school. In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to show you the 4 real reasons the Ottoman Empire collapsed, including one reason that will shock you. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this collapse still affects the Middle East today. Let's start with money. At its peak, the Ottoman Empire controlled the most important trade routes in the world. Every merchant traveling between Europe and Asia had to pass through Ottoman territory. Every ship carrying spices from India paid Ottoman taxes. The treasury was overflowing, but then something changed everything. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed west and discovered America, and suddenly, European merchants found a new route to Asia, one that completely bypassed the Ottomans. The gold stopped flowing in, but the expenses kept growing. The Ottoman army, and one of the largest in the world, needed to be paid. The palace, with its thousands of servants and officials, needed to be maintained. The empire, stretching across 3 continents, needed to be administered. So the sultans did what every desperate government does. They raised taxes, then raised them again, then again. The farmers who fed the empire couldn't afford to plant crops. The merchants who kept the economy running couldn't afford to trade. The soldiers who defended the borders couldn't afford to eat. And when the people can't afford to live, they stop trusting their government. But the economic collapse was just the beginning. Because while the money was running out, the empire's greatest strength was quietly disappearing. For centuries, the Ottoman military was the most feared fighting force in the world. The Janissaries, the elite Ottoman soldiers, were trained from childhood to be the perfect warriors, disciplined, loyal, unstoppable. But by the 1700s, something had changed. Europe was going through a military revolution, new weapons, new tactics, new technology. The musket replaced the sword. The cannon became more powerful. Armies became faster and more organized. The Ottomans refused to change. Why? Because the Janissaries, who were supposed to be the empire's greatest strength, had become its biggest obstacle. Over the centuries, the Janissaries had become incredibly powerful. They didn't just fight wars, they controlled politics. They chose sultans. They blocked any reform that threatened their privileges. When Sultan Selim III tried to modernize the army in 1807, the Janissaries revolted and killed him. Think about that. The soldiers who were supposed to protect the empire murdered the emperor who was trying to save it. By the time Sultan Mahmud II finally destroyed the Janissaries in 1826, it was almost too late. The empire had already lost Egypt, Greece, and most of the Balkans. But the military weakness wasn't the only problem. While the army was falling apart on the outside, something far more dangerous was happening on the inside. The Ottoman Empire had a system for choosing its rulers that sounds unbelievable today. When a new sultan came to power, he would execute all of his brothers, every single one, to eliminate competition. For centuries, this brutal system actually worked. It prevented civil wars and kept the empire stable, but then they changed it.
Instead of killing the princes, they started locking them up. In a part of the palace called the cage, princes would spend their entire lives in luxury, but in complete isolation. No education, no experience, no contact with the outside world. And then, when the old sultan died, one of these isolated, inexperienced princes would suddenly become the ruler of an empire of 30 million people. The results were catastrophic. Sultan Ibrahim, who ruled from 1640 to 1648, had spent 22 years in the cage before becoming emperor. He had no idea how to rule. He made decisions based on paranoia and fear. He was eventually assassinated by his own officials, one incompetent sultan after another, each one weaker than the last, each one more dependent on corrupt advisors and palace politics. And while the sultans were trapped in their palaces, the real enemies of the empire were gathering outside. By the 1800s, the Ottoman Empire was so weak that European diplomats had a name for it. They called it the sick man of Europe, and like vultures circling a dying animal, the European powers were already planning how to divide the body. Britain wanted control of Egypt and the Suez Canal, the gateway to India. Russia wanted access to the Mediterranean Sea through Ottoman territory. France wanted Syria and Lebanon. Austria wanted the Balkans. They didn't want to destroy the Ottoman Empire. Not yet. They wanted to keep it alive, but weak, dependent on European loans, controlled by European advisors, open to European trade. By 1881, the Ottoman government was so deep in debt that it handed over control of its finances to a European commission. Europeans were now collecting Ottoman taxes, running Ottoman customs, controlling Ottoman railroads. The empire that had once made Europe tremble was now being run by European accountants. Then came World War I. The Ottomans made the fatal mistake of joining the losing side. When the war ended in 1918, European powers divided the empire between themselves. Britain took Palestine, Iraq, and Jordan. France took Syria and Lebanon. Greece tried to take Anatolia. And in 1922, after a final war of independence led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the Ottoman Empire officially ceased to exist. 600 years of history, gone. The last sultan, Mehmed VI, left Constantinople on a British warship. He never returned. He died in exile 3 years later. So, why did the Ottoman Empire really fall? Not because of one enemy, not because of one bad sultan, but because of four forces working together: economic collapse, military failure, political weakness, and Western interference, until the empire that had dominated the world for 6 centuries simply could not survive. And here's what makes this story truly important. Every single border in the modern Middle East, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, was drawn by European powers after the Ottoman collapse. Many of the conflicts you see in the Middle East today are a direct result of decisions made in European offices in 1919. The Ottoman Empire didn't just fall. Its fall created the world we live in today. If this video changed how you see history, subscribe, because next week we're going to look at another empire whose collapse changed everything, and whose story has never been told the way we're going to tell it. See you there.